promoting the free exchange of ideas, questioning the status quo, and having some fun along the way. This is the Are We Idiots Show. Now here are your hosts, Mark Weaver and Rich Kroll.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Are We Idiots Show. We are your hosts, Mark Weaver and Rich Kroll. Kroller, how are you, buddy?
Weave, thank you for asking. I'm doing very well, and you look actually pretty handsome today.
When I ask that, I really don't mean it, it's just for the show.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry, I thought it was serious.
We actually had a shout out today on Twitter from Flinny, Tom Flynn. And thanks, Flinny, for making a pseudo endorsement of the Are We Idiots Show. Next is the New York Times. After Tom Flynn, we get a...
Washington Post, New York Times, and the National Enquirer.
But please follow us on Twitter, at Are We Idiots Show, or certainly we want you to share our episodes on Facebook. We ask that every week. So to the extent you're able to do that, pick your favorite episode and share it on Twitter. We greatly appreciate it. We have a great show.
I'll tell you something scary. My nephew-in-law is actually using two of our shows as research for a school project.
Sweet. Do you know what shows?
I think he has to do something with gun control and immigration.
Okay. So I think I know what shows they are. I think you shone on the Shine or Shone.
I'm usually the one asking you for grammatical errors and
It's a Friday. What are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
And don't forget, we have our 5-episode challenge out there. It's actually my 5-episode challenge. Rich cringes every time I say it, but listen to 5 episodes, pick your 5 favorites, and you'll be hooked for life. I guarantee it.
Oh, who wouldn't want to take you up on that challenge? There's so much in it for them.
All right, so our agenda quickly is the Idiot of the Week Awards. Kroller's got some nominees for me here in a second. Then our big topic of the day, social media. That could go a lot of different places. And by the way, when we say that every week, the big topic could go a lot of different places, we really mean it because even though we know the show topic, we don't know what each other is going to say. It's unrehearsed and unscripted, and it could literally go any which way. So looking forward to that. And then we conclude the show with the return of the Kroller Wiki.
The hair stands up in the back of my neck getting a chance to do this again.
And share your knowledge. Okay, throw them at me. Idiot of the Week. Who do you nominate?
All right, we have, the Idiot of the Week nominations. Sometimes they're funny, sometimes they're serious, sometimes they're disturbing, sometimes they're sad. But these are...
They're all three.
They're all three of those. So here's the first one. An Indiana man, the state of Indiana.
Okay.
Faces charges for leaving a loaded gun in the car with his family while he went shopping, leaving the family in the car. His 3-year-old daughter accidentally shot her mother, police said. Shanique Thomas, the woman who was shot, told police she was unaware that Menzo Brazier was carrying his weapon when they left their residence. They brought along their children, a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and when Brazier went into the shopping mall, he left his loaded Glock 19 9mm handgun between the center armrest and the front passenger seat. His 3-year-old daughter got a hold of it, and Thomas said she heard a loud pop, then realized she was bleeding. The bullet went through the driver's seat and struck her in the back. The children were immediately placed in custody of the Indiana Department of Child Services.
Oh, my goodness.
According to police, Thomas had surgery and suffered nerve damage.
Okay, well, that's not too bad after being shot with a Glock.
She wasn't killed.
Pretty darn... What's that? Yeah, she absolutely could
have.
Well,
I actually wouldn't have chosen this as Idiot of the Week if she died. That would have been
so the idiot's the husband, I assume, but really the mom, too.
Well, the mom claims she didn't know the gun was in the car.
Ah, okay.
So I'm going with husband.
Okay. It's sad because unfortunately you hear a lot of these stories all over the country of people not securing their guns properly. But nominee number 2, throw it at me.
Now this is a great segue nominee for our social
with
media.
A U, right? Segue with a U in
it's
it.
Yeah, you butchered it. You said
butchered it.
Segway last week, and it's Segue.
I was thinking the thing that you can ride, a Segway. That's Segw.
You're great at economics. You're terrible at spelling and math, okay?
All right.
So this one's a great segue into our main topic of today, social media. This one's interesting. So an attractive 22-year-old Canadian, and I'm a big fan of Canadians, so this is no indictment on the Great White North.
Guy or girl?
Girl,
Okay.
Melina Roberge, was arrested when she tried to smuggle $11 million worth of cocaine into Australia because it was a chance to post selfies on Instagram during a free holiday she was given to do this. She told the New South Wales State District Court she risked a life sentence in an Australian prison for the opportunity to take selfies in exotic locations and post them on Instagram to receive likes and attention during a $12,000 free cruise she was given to do this that she could not afford. The judge who presided over this case condemned Roberge's motivation for crime as a very sad indictment on her age group who seek to attain such a vacuous existence where how many likes they receive are their currency. She was seduced by lifestyle and the opportunity to post glamorous Instagram photos from around the world. She wanted to be the envy of others. I doubt she is now. This was the largest, this was a record for the largest cocaine haul smuggled in luggage through an Australian air or seaport.
So let me get this straight. She wanted to go on this cruise and wanted to go to Australia, so she agreed to bring cocaine in to help pay for it? Is that I didn't follow it properly.
All right. She was given 2 monstrous suitcases
Right.
filled with cocaine. She was told, you can go on this cruise. It's port hopping,
Right.
in the Pacific.
So she was given the cruise by the people trying to smuggle her.
Correct. And she was also given $4,000 in spending money. So she risked her life.
So she's a mule.
Correct.
Okay.
Good word. I don't use that word enough.
Yeah. Well, I watch Narcos a lot.
Yes, you do.
So obviously, with the theme of the day being social media, and maybe we'll get into the whole likes and the psychology behind the likes that the social media companies program in purposefully. I am going to nominate this young lady, Monina. What was her name? The attractive
Melina
Canadian.
Roberge.
Okay, she gets our idiot of the week because, let's face it, this is common today, and unfortunately, the younger generation, not everyone, but the younger generation in particular, seems to thrive off these likes and the attention of social media. So,
Are you paying the $1 to her favorite charity?
yeah, I'll do that to the.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was a flush week for me. So
Flush?
a flush week. So I get that extra $1 was. I'm flush with cash. Get it?
Oh,
Yeah,
I
flush.
thought you were
No.
playing poker and you caught a flush
No,
and you won some money that
I'm
way.
not a poker guy, as you
Okay.
know. Okay, so very good. And now we're going to move on to the bigger topic of social media. And let's start with what we teased last week. So last week, as we were taping the previous show, Mark Zuckerberg was in front of Congress getting grilled. I think I used the term windbags or old farts or what, I forget exactly.
Yeah, you were really R-rated there.
Oh, yeah. But let's start with that because, again, this could go...
You didn't call them poopy heads, do
No,
you?
I didn't call him poopy head. That's a little bit too
That's
gross for
serious.
me. But let's just start with that. So what did you think of Mark Zuckerberg being hauled before Congress? And in case our listeners have been in a cave somewhere, this really all started with the elections. And I guess it originally came out that the Russians had bought about $100,000 worth of ads on Facebook to sow discontent. But really, what hauled him in front of Congress was this Cambridge Analytica story. We won't go into all the details of that, but essentially, the Trump campaign in the primaries, not the actual election, they used some of this data that people had unwittingly been had given over with a personality quiz developed by this Cambridge University person that worked for Cambridge Analytica. So that's the very, very short story. So what did you think of the testimony and these pompous senators and congressmen grilling him? And they were largely, a lot of them were clueless on how Facebook even works.
I guess it's a catch-22, right? on the one hand, you have these non-technical politicians kind of jumping into something they really have no credibility to understand or discuss or berate somebody on. But the back end of it is concerning if Facebook's actually spying on us, or as our mutual friend Alvaro Puga quoted a bunch of interesting information and cited a lot of examples of social media, how basically everyone knows what everyone's doing 24/7, 365. If there is coercion, manipulation that Facebook is doing underhandedly, then I think that's a problem. So I think there's two issues here. One, you have an attack from folks that don't understand it, but you may have some real societal issues that Zuckerberg clearly knows he's doing. So it's that's a problem.
Right. So you and I have a technology background, so we may actually understand a little bit of the behind the scenes more than some of our listeners. But just for the listeners' benefit, there's two aspects of sharing data. There's one, which is the data that you actually plug in on your Facebook or your Google searches or what have you. Then there's the metadata. That's the data about data. And that's confusing, I understand. But basically, that's the behavioral profile that these companies, and let's narrow it down. The overwhelming majority of the internet advertising is done by Google and Facebook. I think they have about 75% of the total online ad spend because they're the two dominant. Speaking of duopolies, we use that with the Republicans and Democrats. There's a duopoly with Google and Facebook in the internet ad space. And essentially, the data that you put into your Facebook page or Twitter or what have you, that's actually the least valuable. The real valuable stuff is the metadata or the behavioral profile that they can develop by the clicks that you make and your activity online. And it's very, very comprehensive. And that is the really valuable stuff. And that's the stuff that they sell. It's not really the stuff that you post. It's the behavioral and the connections to your friends. That's the really valuable stuff. Any thoughts about that?
Sure, there's a whole business off of behavioral analytics and driving customized programs to individuals who unwittingly think, oh, look at the coincidence. I just received a coupon for 20% off my favorite shoes or my favorite hat or tickets to something or whatever the case may be. It's not so miraculous.
Yeah, and if you've ever gone on Amazon and you looked at a pair of boots or what have you, and it's crazy, like a week later, you'll go to another website and they'll have a banner ad for those same boots. So that follows you around the internet once you go to someplace. And it's very, very sophisticated stuff. Some of the smartest people in Silicon Valley are developing these algorithms. And it's big business, and that's why their stocks have skyrocketed over the last 4 or 5 years. Now, my other point of this is Facebook is a private company, and I am offended personally.
I could tell by the way you're laughing.
By these accusations of a monopoly. And this was not a government mandate that people had to sign up for Facebook. And it's a private company. And people have signed up for the service for free, and the trade-off is we get to market to you, and we get to use your data. It's a private company. It's their platform. This is not a public, a public entity, and that's the deal. I mean, this advertising goes back decades. It used to be billboards. It used to be dumb advertising.
More than decades.
Think of it as they used to have, do carpet bombing in war, right? They used to just drop a ton of bombs from a plane and just whatever it hit, right? Now they have smart bombs. Everything's got a computer chip in it. It's the same thing with advertising. Now Facebook and Google have broken the mold of mass advertising. You used to watch All in the Family. They knew what type of demographic watched All in the Family. If you watched BET, you had a certain other demographic. If you watched CNBC, they knew you were affluent or what have you. So now they're much more smart, and they can know by clicks exactly who you are, how old you are, or approximately how old you are, your income, everything.
It's funny you should mention that. when I was a young kid, I was watching.
Did you like that smart bomb analogy?
That was really
I
good.
worked all week on that.
That shows me you're smart. Actually, you might be a smart bomb. That analogy, I had a flashback to when I was a young kid, maybe 7 or 8 years old, watching the movie Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. And I didn't realize it, but subliminally they threw up a buy Coke for a millisecond a few times. And like a zombie, I made my dad walk me to the soda stand and buy a 42-ounce glass of Coca-Cola. Anyway, listen, you're absolutely correct. What people don't read is the fine print. Facebook's kind of cool, right? You can put all your photos up there and keep in touch with family and friends, and it's a way to communicate with multiple people without having to make 45 phone calls and send 100 emails. But there's a price for everything.
Exactly. There's nothing free. And
Nothing-
Google's
no
the same
free
way,
lunch.
by the way. I don't want to bash Facebook. Google's the same way. Google has the best, search engine in the world and has for a decade now. And it's amazing technology that lets you just within a few seconds call up anything in the world. So there's a price for that, I think.
And there should be. They're
It's
both
free to use.
They're both great technologies. However, on the Facebook side, if there is data or information personal info, I don't care about my info being used for advertisements. It could be even benefit me.
But if you put it in there voluntarily, is it personal now? Or did you give it to
This
them?
is where the fine line comes.
Okay, let me
Or the catch-22. If it depends on how my information's used. If my information shows that I'm on the fence, however, versus voting for Hillary or Trump, and they're able to use that info and send a block of 100,000 people that they determined were on the fence due to their activity and input on Facebook and their comments about Trump and Hillary to the Russians, who then spearfish me with emails that are alienating me against one of the candidates. That's where we cross the line. I'm not saying that's what happened, but our personal data can be used in a rogue or bordering in a criminal way, and that's where I would draw the line.
So what? So it's criminal because a foreign entity was involved, you mean?
Well,
Because where's that line? I mean, to me,
Well,
that's a very
this
slippery
is where
slope.
the famous Rich Kroll, Common Sense
Oh, my
versus
goodness.
Mark Weaver, literalist.
Oh my goodness! But that's slippery slope.
It is
What about
slippery,
that?
but it's not too hard to figure out when personal information is used in the wrong manner or for the wrong means or put in the wrong hands.
Well, isn't that up to someone to determine what that is? I mean, what happens if I was offended that someone tried to sell me pot?
Well, don't go back to microaggressionism. Because I agree with you.
This is the problem. You can't
Well, time out.
define what is good and what isn't.
Would you listen to yourself?
Oh, my goodness.
Using data about pot is one thing. Using data to give to the Russians to coerce an election or to there's clearly a difference
What
there.
about flag burning? What about terrorism? What about
Check.
What about
Yes, those two would be
What
a
about
wrong use.
music in the 50s? I mean,
Who cares?
Well, yeah, but you don't care. But the point is, what about Judaism? What about Muslimism? So the point is, it's almost unlimited what you could define there. We've had this argument before, but there's no such thing as common sense because that's common sense to
Wait a
you.
minute. Let me
not-
ask you. Okay, let me just before I take a hammer out and,
Okay.
and bang your thick cranium.
Okay.
Is there not a difference between using data, to coerce your opinion on 60s music versus use it against you to potentially impact an election?
For me, yes. For other
Aha.
people, maybe not.
So you do have some common sense.
No, for me, but I'm saying is you have to look at this with 330 million people, not me or not you.
I agree with you, but there's certain.
So who makes that rule and who enforces that rule if there's so much subjectivity
Well, I
around it?
think the company, the board of directors, the management team has to say, listen, we can use this data for the benefit of our advertisements and our revenue, but if it's going to potentially get people killed or impact an election, I think that's common sense, a wrong way to use the data.
Well, there's also another aspect here of this which I wanted to touch on.
Please do.
Which people don't, if you're watching the news nowadays, and I think we talked the last couple of weeks about the national media being primarily progressive base. What most people don't understand is Obama campaign in 2012 was lauded by their brilliant use of big data, which was primarily Facebook. And what people don't really understand is that Obama campaign encouraged supporters to download an Obama 2012 Facebook app that, when activated, led the campaign to collect Facebook data both on users and their friends. It said it would grab information about my friends, their birth dates, locations, and likes. They estimate about 190 million people were in this campaign. And Obama campaign actually bragged about how it was able to carefully target campaign messages disguised as messages from friends to millions of Facebook users. Now, the only difference here, I want to be clear, is Obama asked their people to download this app and to share the data. So it was voluntary, but their friends did not know that it was not voluntary to their friends. So there's a little bit of difference in this Cambridge Analytica thing, but not much. And it's amazing how the national media is all over Trump. He stole the election, what have you. And I'm no Trump fan, but the hypocrisy of not bringing up Obama was brilliant use of big data, and Trump stole the election.
Interesting, hypocritical scenario. Although, if Trump used it in coercion with a communist regime like Russia,
Well, they're not communists anymore, but
what are they?
they're supposedly, quasi-democratic because Putin was elected, but we all know he's an authoritarian
It's closer
dictator.
to a dictatorship or a
Right.
fascism than
Right.
a. But anyway, so yes, there is absolutely hypocrisy there. The left wing and the left media doesn't go after that because. So I agree, but I think if Russia meddled in the election with Trump's help, that's also a different level.
And the other thing is with Facebook and Google, if they get branded as a media company as opposed to a platform, which is, I think, a lot of where these senators and congressmen are going, the media platforms are required in an election to disclose who paid for the ad. This ad was paid for by Donald J. Trump or whatever at the end of each message. You could see that happening with political ads because that's the topic du jour.
So let's get this, not that we're off track, but let's
No.
get it back on a slightly different direction with part of the bigger premise. How is social media impacting Americans, impacting the world, impacting our behavior, impacting our free time? It's interesting, but 3 billion people, around 40% of the world's population, use online social media every day, spending an average of 2 hours per day. Sharing, liking, tweeting, and updating on all these platforms. That breaks down to around 500,000 tweets and Snapchat photos shared every minute. Now, I think there's a lot of incredible benefit to social media and advancements, and you're a big advancements guy.
Yep.
But I see the other side, right? I've gotten in slight family debates with my stepkids, Sabrina and Richie, who say, you just don't understand. That's how the world is today. That's how we grew up. That's what we know. If you're the old, stodgy, angry old men, you don't get it. No, I do get it. I'm in technology. But here's what I've seen. There are many, many studies now that show, okay, there's a positive side, but excessive use of social media is leading to anxiety, depression, sleep disorders, a new addiction that hasn't been defined yet by the addiction councils, impact to self-esteem, comparing yourself to others and all their Snapchats, relationship impacts, and I'll explain that in a minute, and decline of interpersonal communication and skills, which is my biggest problem. I'm not going to name names, but I was at a little family dinner a while back at PJ Wheelahands, and I brought some of my younger family members and their friends, and instead of having a face-to-face conversation for the next half hour, all 4 people had their head down, buried in their phones, and I believe they were actually texting each other. And then somebody I know, somebody's son, went on an interview, and he asked if he wouldn't mind texting back and forth versus having he couldn't look the guy eye to eye.
Wow.
I mean, it was a menial job, making $10 an hour.
Right.
So that's huge.
That's the extreme, I think. I mean, I've never even heard of something like
No,
that. But that's amazing.
That's amazing.
Well, my point, and I largely believe that if something is successful, it's because it it provides better benefit than negativity. So I believe social media is a net benefit. And like anything, it has a lot of positives and a lot of negatives. I do agree with you that it is an addictive behavior, and they purposely work on that and make it addictive. It just hasn't been, sanctioned as addictive by addiction counselors or whatever it is nowadays. So there's definitely an addiction component of it, and that's purposeful. I happen to think that it's up to the individual to manage. I don't want regulation. I don't want the government to step in. It's up to the individual to decide, just like if you're drinking too much or you're smoking too much or you're eating too much. It's the same thing with social media. It's up to you to regulate that, or your friends come around you to regulate it.
Easier said than done, right? Because I think this addiction, and some studies are showing that this addiction is mentally as powerful as alcohol, cigarettes, drugs, etc., where it lights up that portion of the brain that reduces.
Right. Well, it's the likes. The likes is the endorphins. Is that what it is?
It's endorphins. Very good.
Go.
And that's usually reserved.
I'm not a science guy, but
that's usually reserved for a science biology guy like myself. So that's where I see a problem, because there's an unsaid rule in the millennial world where if I send you a text, or I send you a Snapchat, or I send you a tweet, you better get back to me immediately, or I think there's a problem.
Right.
And I've seen that behavior. I got to check my phone. I got to check my phone. I got to check my phone. Well, why? Why can't asking what color sweater you like wait till tomorrow morning? Why is that so critical and urgent? But, maybe the person's passed out. Maybe they got in an accident. Maybe they fell and hit their head. It's changing our behavioral norms.
So how does, in our final few minutes in this topic, how does social media evolve? Where do you see it going in the next several years, or maybe even longer term?
I think it just connects us 24/7 by 365. I just sat next to a gentleman, Matt Savage, in an airplane, and he's a virtual reality owner, architect, programmer. And he said, I'm going to Rome for 2 weeks, and I don't even know if I can disconnect. I don't know that my wife and I can disconnect. Now, part of it was he's got corporate responsibility with some things, but he said, I honestly don't know if I can just get away from the daily workaholic addiction of answering everybody every minute of every day, whether it's night, morning, Sundays. And I thought, wow, that just sounded stressful.
Yeah, but I would point out that with that comes the ability for me to go work at my beach house and be there on Friday afternoon in the summer, sitting on the beach.
If I'm your boss, that doesn't sound so good.
I don't care about that. I'm working, right? I'm on the beach.
Good. Yes, you are.
I'm working, and I can be anywhere that I want. He can go to Rome, which 20 years ago he couldn't go because there was no infrastructure to do that. So, again, my mind is that it's up to the individual responsibility to manage this and balance it, and the good outweighs the bad, or else it would have failed in the marketplace. Final comments.
I think there's more positives to social media than negatives. I think, again, we've talked about other topics where it's really on the parents' responsibility to get their kids to save money.
Or adults, spouses.
But
if your
where does it start? Habits start when you're young.
Yeah.
And our little kids grow up on computers and games, and they can program stuff by the time they're 6 that I don't even know how to spell. So I think a lot of social media, there's a new responsibility on parents that, besides instilling a work ethic and teaching how to save money and teaching that there are winners and losers in life and everything we talked about over the past episodes, you kind of got to monitor your kids' behavior. If you let them text and tweet and Snapchat all day, and that can lead to a lot of things like we just saw our beloved Idiot of the Week winner, it can lead to normal, nice people getting involved potentially in criminal situations due to the addiction and the highs of social media. So I put it back on the parents. Let's start grabbing our cell phones at dinner, put them away. Let's grab our cell phones at family events, at church, in movie theaters. There's a time and a place, and I take the millennials off the hook for this one.
And my summary is, listen, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, before all this, there was the Christmas letter. Remember, it came and basically it was a brag of everything that the family did during the year. You used to get
Yep,
some of
I
these,
remember.
right? But now we have Facebook, which is the online version of a Christmas letter. It's not real life, folks. Your people's lives that there are struggling just like you and I. They're not perfect. They're not glamorous. They're not, not without stress and trauma. And especially for the young kids out there, don't strive to be like friends on Facebook. They're not real friends, and that's not their real life. So
Dilly.
dilly, right? Okay, so we're going to move on to the Crawler Wiki. And just for you new listeners, Crawler Wiki is I'm going to give Rich 3 different common phrases or somewhat common phrases, and he's going to tell us the origin of them, and I'm going to tell him whether he's right or not. So
It's amazing, because I like to read a varied amount of information across a historical perspective, and it's amazing what I retain and remember, which makes this Crawler Wiki easier for me than it would be for you.
Of course. Well, you're a lot smarter and a lot more humble. All right, the first one is run amok.
Run amok.
He's run amok.
This
You've
is
heard
one of my
that.
favorites.
Okay.
Now,
Well, you can't miss this one up. Can't mess this one up.
it's almost impossible, right? So run amok. There was, I think, I may get the group wrong. It was the Incans or the Aztecs, but some of the early Central American Native Americans who were powerful warriors, they had the god of war Amok. And very often, before a big battle, in worship and praise to Amok to help them in battle, they would run around with their faces painted and swords ablazing in a very chaotic, hysterical manner. And anytime we now, in today's world, run into chaos or difficult situations or a situation gone bad, we refer to that great god of war by saying, it's run amok.
Very close. I think I'm going to give you credit for
Really?
that. So this is close. Your geography was a little off, but run amok is synonymous with the term go crazy. The term originated in Southeast Asia, not the Aztecs.
I'm only 8,000 miles off.
Where amok, variously spelled A-M-U-K, A-M-U-C-K, and that's probably too much information, meant murderous frenzy or rage. Their belief was that fallen warriors became favorites of the gods, whereas failed missions were punished by dishonor and death. Unsurprisingly, the Amako warriors had little to lose, and their attacks were maniacal and frenzied.
Wow, when was the last time I started 1 for 1?
That was great. Yep, well, it must have been that last week when you did the Trump tweets. You were 2 for 3. Remember that?
Or was I 2 for 3?
Yeah, you were 2 for 3. All right, second one. A bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush.
Well, this one's a little more difficult. You'd have to go back even further in time. So the Bushmen, the Bush tribes of Africa, going back thousands and thousands of years, even before Amok, they used to hunt by hand. They weren't, tools had not been crafted yet, spears and bow and arrows. It was very difficult to catch some of the meteor birds like emu and turkeys and huge pelicans. So they'd sit for hours and hours. It's one thing to walk up to an unaware deer. It's a lot tougher to walk up to a bird because sometimes they can fly away, except for maybe an ostrich, but has a land speed of 40 miles an hour, by the way.
Can an emu fly?
It's an emu, by the way, not emu. And no, they
sorry.
cannot fly. They're like an ostrich in the ostrich family. So it used to be one of these guys would say, listen, there's 2 over there. I'm pretty confident I can get those 2. And then the other guy would say, listen, I think I can get that 1. And invariably, the one warrior or hunter would always come back with the 1 bird in hand and feed his family. And the guy that was trying to go for glory and get the 2, they'd run away. He'd get nothing. His family would starve. Hence, 1 in the hand is better than 2 in the bush.
Okay, well, that was a very elaborate story, way off mark. This is more like Downton Abbey-ish, this explanation. This medieval proverb comes from the sport of falconry, where the bird in the hand, in other words, the preying falcon, was worth more than 2 in the bush, the prey. So the bird was the prize. That's where that came from. I would never have guessed that, by the way.
Neither would I, but my story's pretty close.
Yeah.
Not even a quarter?
Nah.
0. You're giving me 0.
All right, lastly, a baker's dozen. We've
Wow.
all heard this when you buy bagels, right? A baker's dozen. Where'd that come from?
So it's funny how you're chronologically going back in time. So some of the earliest bakers were 10 and 20,000 years ago in Egypt and Australia, the original Aborigines. And bread was one of the initial staples in many people's diets as they learned how to mill grain. But what happened was, it wasn't a high-paying job and it was a low-nutrition food, but because they were basically poor bakers, as they're making all their bread for the community and the tribes, they would steal every 13th piece of bread. And the people that were financing this didn't recognize, over a dozen groups of 12 that 13 were missing, so they did it to pay themselves.
Yeah, not even close, actually.
How can that not be close?
This phrase is widely believed to originate in medieval times. You had the timing about right. When English bakers gave an extra loaf when selling a dozen in order to avoid being penalized for selling a short weight. Bakers back then could be fined, pillared, or flogged for selling underweight bread. So just to make sure, they gave an extra one, so they gave that 13th.
My story was 13 as well versus 12.
Well, everyone knows it's 13. That's the whole point of a baker's dozen. We all know that. I mean, you got to have the origin.
I thought, okay.
You just can't have the number right.
So you're only giving me 1 for 3?
That's all I'm giving you, man.
I was off to a great start.
Another great episode in the books there, Richie. Any final comments?
Mark, you're just a wealth of knowledge. Although
I can't do math. I can't spell. Is that
you're
what you're saying?
clueless in so many
And I don't know
areas.
science. Is there any limitations you have other than economics?
Oh, I have a lot. You have a
Okay.
much better hairline, and you seem to keep the weight off better than I do. But you are boring. Thank God we work well together. Your sunny, shining face makes my day.
Oh, great. Mine too. All right. So just a reminder, please send in your suggestions at areweidiots.com. And then make sure you tune in next week. We're going to talk about inequality. And I'll just editorialize like I always do. Wouldn't it be horrible if we were all equal? So I don't even get the term inequality, but whatever. This is brought on by Bill Gates and Warren Buffett had made comments around this. Certainly our political
Communism.
Yep, certainly our political leaders, Bernie Sanders, Donald Trump, exacerbated this term as well. What's true? What isn't true? What can be done about it? We'll talk about it next week. And as always, please remember, if what you see or hear sounds idiotic, then we're just the guys to help you sort it out. See you all next week. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Are We Idiots Show. Please subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher so you can enjoy all episodes.